doing. So, well, I didn't have to thinking about whether I start with Grandma or Grandpa or both of them together, but most of my memories are not of them together, but separately. So I decided I'd start with Grandma, and I don't know how old I would have been.
So just for the record, state the name of who Grandma is.
Oh, Grandma Susie.
Okay.
Grandma Susie and Grandpa Ivan. So that's the only grandparents I really knew. So growing up, we lived right across the street from them, and so we just had to cross. Well, it was a main road, so you had to watch and be careful. But we learned really early that you didn't get to go again if you didn't watch for traffic. So we got good at watching for traffic. But I remember going to Grandma's house and sliding down her stairs. And I don't think I really slid down the stairs, but I would go from bumps. It would bump down the stairs on my bum. And Paul and Dad were there with me. And Edith was there, and she was concerned we'd get hurt, and so she kept watching us, and she was such an amazing babysitter. She would read Dr. Seuss stories to us and have us act them out, and somewhere she got a hold of a old red sweater.
You want to join the call?
Oh, yeah. It was a woolen sweater. Gotcha? It was an old
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it had shrunk in the wash, and so it had really, really long sleeves, and the rest of it was tiny. So she'd put us in that, and we would get to, if we were in that, you were the Who. In Horton, here's a Who. So we got to see the Who from Whoville. So that was kind of fun. But anyway, back to Grandma. Grandma loved us kids. I don't know, the boys say not so much, but I don't remember ever a time going to Grandma's house. I didn't think I was just really priceless. And I went and picked her a bouquet of flowers one day, and she was thrilled with them. And she put them in a little cup and put them in the windowsill. And to this day, those flowers have kind of been my special ones, because every day she'd have me go pick her another bouquet. I, in retrospect, wonder if she really loved dandelions that much, or she just was really happy that I was going and picking them before they went to seed. But she acted like that was the best flowers she'd ever gotten. So that was kind of sweet. And so I remember picking her dandelions and just making them into this great big bouquet and taking them in. The stems were so big I couldn't fit another one in my hand. One day we went over, and I don't know if Paul and Dan were with us or not, but Grandma asked us if we wanted to have a snack, and I had this big wad of gum in my mouth, and I didn't want to throw it away. And she asked me where I'd gotten such a big wad of gum, and I said, well, in the cupboard. And she says, what did it look like? And it was at our house, so it would have been Mom's gum. And I told her that it was little gums that were just square. I'd eaten about somewhere between 6 and 8 laxative gums. She was a little worried about me, but it didn't seem to affect me. I didn't have any real issues from it. I remember her and Mom discussing it and laughing that I would eat that many. I mean, it's frustrating because I'd eaten all the laxative gums, but also thought it was kind of funny because they were waiting for the after effects, and I don't remember having any. So, Grandma got me to. She had her pantry underneath the stairs, and she would put things in tin cans at the very, very back under the stairs, and she would have me get them out. Thinking back about that was before she'd had her knee or hip surgeries, and I'm sure she was in quite a bit of pain and couldn't get down and do it. But I remember thinking I was so special because I was little enough I could get back there and I could get what it was, and I'd touch them and she'd say, no, the other one, yeah, on the other side, and then she'd say, yep, that one, and I would get it and pull it out for her. And I I remember doing that, and then in the same day, I remember making peanut butter cookies. And oh, I got to put the little fork things on the top where you did the crisscrosses, and I thought I was something that I got to do that one that day. But I still, to this day, every time there's peanut butter cookies, it reminds me of Grandma. And I can't have peanut butter cookies without thinking of her. And she always had hollyhocks outside of her kitchen window. And they weren't big hollyhocks. They would get maybe 4 feet high was kind of the highest, I think, that they ever got. And so I thought, I didn't think hollyhocks were that big a flower. I just thought they were just little, nice flowers. So when I got to Canada, I went and planted some hollyhocks because I thought, oh, this will be like having a little bit of Grandma at my house. And I planted my hollyhocks there, and I put them in soil that was really rich and really well irrigated, and right at the downspout at the house, just like Grandma did. And those things got as tall as my roof. They were over 10 feet tall. It might have been a little different variety or something, but I know a lot of it was just the soil I put them in, because the other neighbors didn't have hollyhocks that were that big and that tall. Other memories of Grandma, she worked at the rest home, at the rest home. And I remember driving her little Ford car, and she was so thrilled when she got that car. She had a way to go back and forth to the rest home in that car, and I thought it was pretty cool that she had a car too. I missed a couple here. Where am I thinking through? I had this all in my head last night, and I didn't write it down because I was in bed. We used to play at the house there in Lava. We used to play in the horseradish, and it had little tunnels through it. We would hide down in there so nobody could see us, and that was our big thing, to see if anybody would ever figure out where we were, because we were so well hidden in the horseradish. I think they knew we were there, and it was kind of like when you go play hide and go seek with your kids, and you just leave them hiding for a while because it's the first time you've had peace all day. So be able to hide that good. And I remember Grandma and Grandpa and Jim and Edith was having some kind of an episode, and they had to sit on her. She was going into a convulsion, and they were keeping her safe so she didn't thrash around and bang her head and stuff. So that was a little traumatic for me. But I got to go sleep overnight with Edith a few times, and I always thought that was such a treat. And the biggest reason I thought it was such a treat is we got to say our prayers kneeling on the bed instead of beside the bed where it was cold. We got to kneel on the soft bed. I think about that. I could kneel on the bed anytime. It wouldn't be a problem. But Edith always had us kneel on the bed, so it was a treat to go stay with her because we got to kneel on the bed. And we sorted buttons for hours and hours and hours with Edith. I remember sitting in Grandma's front room just enjoying sorting buttons. I don't know why that was such a wonderful puzzle, but it was. Possibly because it was at Grandma's house. But Grandma always had, I shouldn't say always, often had Ritz crackers up in the cupboard. And she'd let us have a couple. And I remember thinking I was so special. I had crackers named after me because Uncle Jim had given me the nickname Ritz. So I thought when it was Ritz crackers, they were mine. So I thought that was kind of something fun too. Grandma we would often have Thanksgiving in Lava. And Grandma was always in charge of doing pies and buns. And I don't remember how old I would have been, but we were still at the Monroe house, so we were still right across the street. But I remember her teaching me how to roll out pie crust. And it would have been one of the last years we spent at the Monroe house, because after that it was my job to roll out the pie crust. she showed me how, and I got good enough at it that she just let me do it. So I always loved making pies because I got to make pies with Grandma. I never did get as good at making her rolls as she was, but she would take the time to roll them out and cut them and then spread butter on them and then fold them in half, rather than just, my mom got to where she would just roll them in balls and toss them in the pan and put butter over the top. But Grandma took the time to roll them out and cut them in circles and then fold them in half. So I think I'm going to have to figure that one out someday when I'm teaching my grandchildren how to make rolls, maybe. I still got boys, so we're good for a while. Maybe they'll want to learn. I don't know. We got to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house on Sunday night to go watch Disney, and that was a really fun treat. And Grandma and Grandpa always had Sunday evening. They would do popcorn, and sometimes Grandma would have real orange juice. And oh, was that ever a treat when we got to have real orange juice instead of Kool-Aid. I remember going and collecting herbs for Grandma for her so she could make her green drink. And I would go and collect mint and catnip and stinging nettle and thistle and mallow weed, and there was the other weed that we used to call, I called it the walking on weed, because it would grow all along the edges of the roads where nothing else would grow, and you could walk on it and it was soft, because I was mostly barefoot, and so it would be cooler than the pavement. So I would walk along the edges of the road, but there was so much gravel there that when those weeds were there, that it would be softer on my feet. So I like to walk on that one, but we'd collect that, and she would take and blend that all up in a blender with some orange juice. And it would get really frothy and green and orangey flavored with that green. Oh, I don't know how she blended it, but us kids loved that. I'm sure it was really healthy for us, and I'm sure she was probably trying to work with the pain she was having with her hips and her knees and finding something that would help with that. And maybe, I'm sure that probably helped some. But it was interesting to learn of all those herbs and the things that she'd have us gather up and bring in, and she'd just toss them all in the blender and blend them up, and we would get to have a drink of that orange juice with it. And I'd gather peppermint and take it to her, and she would dry it and use it for peppermint tea. And it was fun to go to her house because she would take the time when she made gravy, the white sauce gravy, she would brown the roux. So she'd brown the flour and the butter before she added the milk, and I loved that flavor. My mom didn't take the time to do that, but I think that was because it took time and she was busy trying to feed 10 kids. But Grandma would take the time to brown the roux so that you ended up with this beautiful browned butter gravy flavor. She also made bread that we just used to just think was the best in the world, because she would do half and half. It would be half whole wheat and half white. And I loved that bread. Oh, that was so good. Once in a very rare while, she would make plain white bread, and that was amazing. And I don't remember whether we started at our house or at her house, but I do remember having that white dough cooked in batter, or you'd stretch it out and cook it in hot oil, and it would be scones is what we called it. Bread scones. In Canada, they have scones, but they're not bread scones. They're biscuits. They're baking powder biscuits with berries and chocolate chips and stuff in them. They're good too, but they're just not scones. So when Grandma moved up to the Benson house, that was really nice for her and Grandpa, because they had indoor plumbing and indoor heating, and they didn't have to cook over a wood stove or use it to heat the house, and they didn't have to go out to the outhouse. So that was a really, really fancy thing. And there was a little china cabinet thing that Grandma would put her pretty dishes in. And I remember looking at those dishes and thinking how pretty they were. She would always have me help her wash the windows. I would do the outside, and she would do the inside. And she would pay me like $5 to come and help her do all the windows in the house. And she'd point out where I left the street. And I got, at that point, I was young enough still and loved her enough that washing windows is still something I just find great joy in doing. So that was kind of cool that I got to do that. And then, trying to think if there's anything I've left out there. I think I've covered most of my major memories of Grandma. There's lots of others interspersed in there, just the different things. Oh, the one other thing that I thought was so cute was when, after Grandpa had passed away, Grandma went to live with these other three little ladies in this apartment in Lava. And I remember sitting there listening to her talking to my mom, and she was talking about that she was doing just fine. She says it's really good that we've got us all there. She says because we take turns helping each other with our socks, because none of us can reach our toes to get our socks on. But when we have each other there, we can get our socks on. Her stockings. I thought that was just, it never occurred to me that that would be an issue. But when she brought that up, I thought, wow. Because she never complained about being in pain or hurting or any of those things, which was kind of, as an adult, I look at it and think it would have been nice to at least know she was having some, so I would have known to expect it when you get older, but I guess that's okay too. Then thinking back to Grandpa, I loved to be outside with Grandpa. He was always doing something with the horses, and I remember getting sent home because I was too little and it was dangerous to be around the horses. And so I finally convinced him I would stay out of the way and I'd be safe. And one day he was shoeing the horses, and I went right underneath the belly of either Belle or Jen. I don't know which one it was. It was one of his big horses, but it was Belle or Jen. And not a flinch. That horse didn't even, I look at that and I think the size of those big work horses, and I went right underneath, just walked underneath. And that horse just let me. It was not a big deal. But I remember the horse shifted legs a little because Grandpa was doing some horseshoeing, and it caught one of my toenails. Just caught it just on the edge of it, enough that it went and smashed the end of my toe, and then went on down and didn't draw blood or anything. And I kind of let out a little yelp, and then Grandpa looked at me and asked me if I was okay, and I just gritted my teeth and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine, because I knew that if he thought I'd gotten hurt, he'd send me home." So it wasn't more than like that night that the toenail turned all black and blue, and it was a couple weeks later it fell off. But it grew back, and it's just a double thick toenail now. So that's kind of, every time I see that toenail, I think of being out with Grandpa and not daring to say I was hurt, because then he wouldn't let me come out and spend time with him and the horses anymore. He used to every once in a while put me up on the neck of the horse, and I could hold on to the balls of the hames, which is the collar they put on the horses. And I thought I was something when I got to ride up there and hold on to those little balls. I thought that was like riding the king's horses. That was the horse's crown there. I was holding on to it. He didn't do that very often, and at Christmas time, he would harness up the horses, and he would attach bells a lot of times to the harnesses, so you'd hear the bells jingle as he fed the cows and whatnot. And he would feed the cows with a sleigh a lot of times. When there was snow on the ground, he'd get up the sleigh, and when he did that, we would attach our little sleighs onto the back end of the big sleigh with a baling twine, and the horses would pull us. And we had to make sure that we kept our feet down a little bit, so that if the horses stopped, we didn't slide right back up underneath the sleigh. Thinking about that, probably the worst thing that would have happened is we would have banged our head a little bit. But it was so fun to get out and have the horse pull us on our sleigh. Grandpa was always building something, and he never wasted a nail. Every time he would tear something down or put something up, he had these cans of nails of different sizes that he would keep in the tool shed. And he'd pull out those cans of nails when he was building something, or taking something apart, and he'd throw the nails into the cans. And he would give us a little hammer, or me. I don't remember Dan and Paul having much patience for it, but if we get the hammer and a rock and sit there and straighten those nails. And when we thought it was straight enough, we'd have it, hand it to Grandpa, and he'd take it and look at it, and if it was straight enough, he would pull it, pound it into whatever he was working on, and if it wasn't, he'd hand it back to us to straighten it some more. And I got pretty good at straightening nails for it, so when he was out there working on a project, we'd sit and straighten nails. He did a lot of his own horseshoeing, and I remember him in pounding the horseshoes. I don't remember him heating them up or using a blacksmith anything to heat them up to get them hot enough. Probably he did, but I probably wasn't around for a lot of that. But he would hammer them on the anvil a lot and get them so that they would fit the horse's feet. And he would use his files to file down the horse's hoof so that he could get the shoes to fit properly. And he'd go through different shoes, and he kind of could just look. He had them all hanging up on the wall on one side of his shop there, and he'd look and pull down a couple that he thought were the right size and go and kind of fit them onto the horse's hoof there to see if it was the right size, and bang them a little bit if they weren't, and or trade them out for another one that would fit. He had a dog named Mutt, and Mutt was Grandpa's dog, and it didn't like kids. And I remember forever trying to pet Mutt, and Mutt would just growl at me. And it was really good. Grandpa was good about just saying, yeah, you have to leave him alone. You don't. If the dog doesn't want you to touch him, you don't, because it'll bite you. And Mutt never wanted to be petted. Because every once in a while he'd let me pat him on the head, just careful. But that was only when Grandpa was there, making sure that it was okay. But I tried to pat Mutt once with Grandpa not around, and I got snarled at and was sure he was going to bite, but he didn't. So thank goodness. But I don't remember Grandpa having another dog after Mutt. When Mutt died, that was kind of the last dog I remember Grandpa having. And he had that one when he was at the Monroe. I don't remember him taking it to, I don't think he had Mutt at the Benson. But Mutt was a black and white sheepdog. And I don't know, I don't remember the sheep. I remember just little tiny bits of sheep one spring where we had lambs. But after that, I don't remember the sheep. I was too young and not interested in the sheep themselves. I liked the lambs, but I didn't really like the sheep. They were stinky. And they look like they should be soft, but when you touch a sheep, it's not that soft. It's fluffy, like you can push the wool down quite a bit, but it doesn't feel soft and cuddly like you'd want it to. The lambs did, though. So, more memories of Grandpa. I remember Grandpa always farming with his horses, and he would get out and harness them up, and he had them trained that he could just say words, and they would do, he'd say whoa, and it would stop, and he'd say bah, and it'd back up, and I can't remember what he did for left and right, but I remember he had a left and right command, because when they would haul the hay, way back when they were hauling hay, they had a really low trailer that the deck would have sat just on top of the axle, and it had wheel well, so that and they would put hay on top, loose hay on top of that, and somebody would be standing there and move the hay around, and they put chains underneath the hay, and then they move the hay around on top of that wagon, and pile it up and pile it up and pile it up until they had the wagon full, and then they'd take it down to the derrick. And the derrick, that Grandpa would hook the horses onto that derrick, and they would go clear out into the road, and they'd go right or left, and it would get that derrick to lift that load of hay up off the wagon, and then they'd let the chains go, or they would drop it down and pull the chains out from the haystack. And so they made haystacks that were just loose hay back when I was quite little. And I remember watching Grandpa do that with the horses, and he didn't even have to be holding the horse's reins. He would just tell them what to do, and he was working with the chains and the boom and whatnot. I don't remember exactly what, but he had that team of horses, Bell and Jen, trained to where he didn't even have to have the reins for that they do it. I remember him asking him once, he didn't farm with a tractor, or I remember asking him why, I said, Grandpa, why don't you farm with a tractor? And he didn't call me Lily Juan very much, but I remember 2 or 3 times when he said Lily Juan, he called me Lily Juan. And he says, Lily Juan, when you holler woe, a tractor doesn't listen. And that's all he needed to say. I'm farming with tractors. He did not love the farming as much as he loved the horses. But he really did love his horses, and he had trained them well. I don't know why he would have done it, but he at one point traded off one of his horses and got this Shire. Now, Shire is a black and white horse. It was black, and then it had a white stripe down its base, and it had a white feet. It had 3 white feet, 1 black foot. And it was a big horse, and it was young. I'm quite sure it's fairly young. And that horse forever was just running away, and it didn't listen to Grandpa very much, and it didn't want to do what he wanted it to do. And I think he probably, when he got that horse, it was because either Bell or Jen were getting too old to pull the wagon and to do the farm work, and so he needed a younger horse that had the energy. But that horse just was not. It was. I remember it running, and the other horse being kind of dragged along. You know, they are set up in a team, and when one goes, the other one has to kind of follow or be dragged along because they're hooked up together. And so that Shire was dragging the other horse along, and Grandpa was trying to get the Shire under control. And I remember him finally hooking it up by itself and just taking it out and making it run. And work horses do not run well. It's not something that they are designed to do very well. And I don't remember if he kept that horse or decided that was the end of his farming with horses. I don't remember much about having horses after that, but I remember him just getting really frustrated with that horse because it wouldn't just calm down and do its work. It had to be fighting all the time. But at that point, I decided I didn't like Shires. I only liked Clydesdales. That's just my experience with 2 different breeds of horses, and I figured it was the Shire's fault. That's just because of the kind of horse it was. It wasn't because it. So.
Clydesdale or Belgian?
Belgian, yeah. I don't know. Did Grandpa, was Bell and Jen, were they Belgians or were they Clydesdales?
Yep.
One of each?
No, they were Belgians.
Oh, they were Belgians. Okay.
I didn't know they were Belgians. I thought they were just workhorses. Right.
Well, Ben's better at this than I am, and I knew that there was differences in them. I knew that we had Clydesdales and Belgians and Shires, and there's another one that they use as workhorses. What is it?
I never knew anything about those breeds. They were just, if they were big, they were workhorses, and if they were little, they were riding horses.
Yeah.
He didn't very often have any purebreds, did he?
I don't know. The other horse that they used for workhorses were Percherons.
But we didn't have registered or purebred horses when I was a kid.
Okay, and I had no idea.
I thought the Shires were the prettiest.
Well, it was a pretty horse, but it was a miserable horse. So
I don't remember that part at all. This is Roy.
I don't remember farming with him much after that.
Well,
You remember a lot more than I do. At least more detail.
Well, probably by the time I get your age, Roy, I may not. So this is a good thing. We'll have it all down, right?
Well, I guess it's all right if you can't remember it though. Then it's just there for you.
I guess so. I'm sure there's lots of other memories. I just remember that I thought I was pretty special because Grandpa would let me hang out with him sometimes. And I love to be out on the farm doing things and hanging out with him and doing the work. So, and I always thought that Grandpa was pretty special because Grandma always fixed him all the good food. Anytime you went out and got to eat at Grandma's house, it was a special treat because they had really good food at Grandma's house. And I think that mostly is childhood memories, and that Grandma cooked a little different than Mom, so it just tasted so much better.
Lawana, did they ever have anything other than potatoes and gravy?
Potatoes and gravy and bread, and Ritz crackers once in a while. Grandma made peanut butter cookies, which I thought were a real treat. I'm starting to realize that wasn't that big a deal either, but to me it was, because at our house you use the peanut butter for peanut butter and jam or peanut butter and honey on bread. You couldn't waste it by making it into cookies because you always had sour cream to use up, and you made sour cream cookies at my house. And if you got lucky, you had some chocolate chips to put in the sour cream cookies. So, and you have to remember, we're talking real sour cream, not the kind you buy in the store. So it was sour.
Lawana, your memories are very interesting, very good. You mentioned a time, one time that Susie may have had hip pain or knee pain. She had several hip surgeries. She never had knee surgeries.
Okay. And I didn't know. I just knew that when I think back to those times, I remember her having me come over and help with a lot of those kind of things. But I never remember her ever complaining about hurting or not doing what needed to be done. She went to work. She, got everything done at her house. She did all the cleaning that needed to be done. You never went to Grandma's house when it was messy. It was always tidy.
I even remember her driving the D4 Caterpillar to till the field.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't remember her out in the fields much, but wow, is that ever amazing?
That would have been a real miserable job for her. She had to have help to get up out of the seat because she was so stiff and sore by that.
Wow.
And they didn't let us kids drive it?
Oh, it had to be going 24/7. They let us once in a while, Roy. And they made me
Yeah, I remember.
sometimes.
That's the thing we didn't want to do. I remember now. Going to school. So we tried to stay home and help, but they wouldn't let us.
Oh, you're welcome, Louise.
Do any of the rest of you want to tell any memories of Ivan and Susie?
I've got a question for Lawana.
Okay.
Do you ever remember being disciplined by your grandparents?
Never remember being disciplined by Grandma and Grandpa. I remember being disciplined by my mom a few times. I don't ever remember being disciplined by my dad. I didn't usually need discipline. I got thinking about that. The only times I ever got spanked once was just because all of us kids had been out doing something, and I think Mom was pregnant with probably Jay, and she was just at her wit's end, and we hadn't listened, and came in muddy and tired and hungry, and she was too, I'm sure, tired and hungry, and she gave us all a spanking because we were muddy and dirty. And the other time I remember getting a spanking, Linda has a story about me getting a spanking, and that I refused to cry. She was spanking me, and I refused to cry, and my mom kept spanking me because I would not cry. And I think back to that, and I think that was probably the time I remember getting spanked, and it wasn't my fault. What had happened was not me, and Paul had blamed me. Now, that's a typical thing for kids to do, I'm sure. But I wasn't sorry for it because I hadn't done it, I'm sure. So I wasn't going to. And Linda just said that was when she realized I had a stubborn streak that went all the way through. But I didn't usually need to be disciplined. If you told me what was expected and what needed to be done, I didn't like to be in trouble. I didn't like to do things that were wrong. I didn't intentionally ever do anything that would get me in trouble intentionally. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't make quite a few mistakes and do some stupid things in my lifetime, but I didn't like to be in trouble. I didn't like to do wrong things. So, growing up, if you tell me not to do it, I usually didn't.
I wish my grandkids were like you.
Oh, so do I. It amazes me. I grew up thinking that's all that you had to do with kids is just teach them and they would choose right. And I was really quite lucky with my kids that was pretty much true. If I told Cody to do something and it wasn't, if I told him he had to, he would prove that his will was stronger than mine. But if I told him that this is what needed to be done and then let him choose what it needed to happen, he would get it done. So I was lucky with him. AJ, I just had to make him feel guilty and, tell him I was disappointed, and boy, that worked. So I don't remember having to spank my kids much, but I think back and I think there are times when it would have been so much easier to just spank them and have it be done with rather than sitting and making, because I would a lot rather have somebody give me a spanking for something I did than sit there and make me feel bad about it.
Are we different parents than we used to be, or is it because their peers have more influence on them and they aren't taught?
Both.
Okay.
We live we live in a world where if you spank your children, the neighbors can call the social services on you, and they can take your kids until they can prove that you're a good parent. They assume you're a bad one. So you're always afraid that somebody's going to rip your kids away from you, so you don't dare do anything that the neighbors might not think is a good plan.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to share their?
I'll share a couple things about Grandpa and Grandma.
Go ahead.
I remember Ben and I had been, I think Grandma Watson was there. That's on the Monroe place. And she was staying with Grandma. We went over, we've been up on the hill and got some of that powder buff ball. I don't know what they are. They're fungus, I guess. Get brown powder in them. We put it on her face and went in. Grandma Watson went, oh! She's all, I don't know whether she was making a noise because she thought it was, or just was making a noise, but Grandma told us to go wash. And I remember talking about Grandpa and his horses.
Hey, how are you?
It was a time when we were hauling off.
Good. But a few times he was on the couch looking out the window waiting for us to come, and then a couple times.
So anyway, we were hauling
Go out. Phil, where are you?
We got somebody that needs to go on mute.
You're welcome. How's your trip? Good.
go on mute. We're getting background noise.
Although your to-do list has to be like put on hold. So it was good. So thank you again. Yeah. Travel. Yes. Yeah, everything was good. It rained on the way down. It was
him on call?
I think we must.
Yeah, it was good. Well, yes.
Fall asleep?
Thank you so much.
For me? No.
What?
Look,
So there are a couple of, you can try to
Did Herb fall asleep?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had the hauling rocks and we pulled
Oh, yeah. There's
the wagon down in the creek there, and he was trying to get it up the other side. And Lawana talked about the horses, but I remember one of them was quite a bit smaller.
Well, thanks again so
small,
much.
but he was trying to get them to pull together, and he even got the whip out, which he didn't do very often, trying to get those horses to pull on those rocks, get that wagon up the other side so they could roll the rocks off of it. And I remember he was pretty animated at those horses until he got that done, and he got them to pull together finally. They just got to pull together. So.
Yeah. I do remember one other time with the horses. We were coming across the wooden bridge between the Brower and the Monroe before the bridge fell out. And it was starting to get slanted. And I know that Grandpa used to pull stuff across it still at the high end. And this time it had one of the beams underneath, I'm sure, had broken. And so it was really slanted. And it was probably a little slippery or something that day. I don't know. But one of the horses went down and started sliding to slide off the bridge. And Grandpa got the other horse to hold, and he calmed the one that was laying down enough that they could do whatever it was they needed to do to get it pulled back up and get its feet under it so that it could get back up and get across the bridge. And that was the last time I remember ever taking the horses across that bridge. I remember walking across it quite a few other times, but knowing after watching that horse almost plunge into the river and pull the wagon and the other horse with him, I realized that it was a really dangerous bridge and that we probably shouldn't be using it much. I think we took the Jeep across once or twice after that. What then?
Yeah.
We shouldn't have been using it.
No, we shouldn't have. We shouldn't have, but we did. It made so much sense to be able to go back and forth to the Brower rather than have to go all the way down around on the highway.
We needed it bad.
Yeah. I also remember another time when Grandpa and Grandma were taking care of Caspers. We got to go up there and spend the evening with them, and they had color TV. We thought that was pretty cool.
That was cool. I do remember doing that too.
And the other thing is when they were taking care of at Palisades down by Palisades Resort down by Sterling. They were taking care of the Palisades Resort, and I remember going by to visit. And Grandpa said to Grandma, I'm going to take these kids down and get them an ice cream. And we were like, what? And I think Grandma was not sure whether they ought to be just filling out the ice cream they were supposed to be selling or not. But he took us all down, and we all got an ice cream for him at the resort. He probably paid for it. I don't know, but anyway, we thought that was the coolest thing. That Grandpa took us down to get an ice cream when we stopped by to visit.
Well, fun. Well, we've almost used up the hour, so I don't think that we'll have Doug do his turn today. I think we'll just see if there's enough other memories of Ivan and Susie to fill up the time. Anybody else want to share any?
Yeah, I would like to. This is Joe. Grandma Susie, at Christmas time, I was collecting stuff in my cedar chest, and she gave me, it was a ceramic nut with a squirrel on it full of taffy. And I had that for years. And then it got broke in one of my moves. And, I tried to glue it together, and it was just shattered. But when Roy and I got together, we started seeing them at the DI, because our date on Fridays was going to the DI. And I would see them, and then I started collecting them. And I never found one that was exactly as nice as the one she got me. But anyway, so every time I see one in the DI, I think of that. And Grandpa, the last time I seen him was at the home hotel. I think Dean was 2 or 3 years old. And I went and sat in the lobby with him for a couple hours, talked to him. And that's the last time I remember seeing him. But anyway, and they always had me play the piano when I'd go over there. So, across the road. Anyway, they were always real good to me. I just really thought the world of them. And when I went to Roy and I went to one of the reunions at Keith and Irma's, I got a prize for something we were doing, and I had my choice of something, I can't remember, and then a picture of Grandma and Grandpa. And I said, oh, I want that picture of Grandma and Grandpa, and we still have that up in our house. Or our apartment. Anyway, they were always just really, really good to me.
Good. Good.
Yeah, it was.
He always called me Sawdog for tea. Is that one kind of nickname? And then I remember when I was just little, he'd say, oh, you're such a good boy. Someday we might know what you're good for. And so when people say, oh, that was nice, I say, yeah, my grandpa used to tell me someday we'd know, but I don't know yet.
And when I first started going with Roy, my Roy says, oh, we got to be careful with Grandpa because he thinks we're way too young to be dating. I said, us? We're 16 and 17. Why does he think that? so I was real careful around Grandpa.
Oh, fun. Good stuff. Anybody else?
I'm just glad that she can remember more than I can. But when she talks about it, then some of it comes back a little bit.
Oh, good.
Nice memories. I just wish I could remember it as good as her.
Huh. Roy, I remember that he called you sawed off, and I remember that you used to carry a tack hammer. Everywhere you went, you had a tack hammer in your hand for months. Do you remember that?
I remember having a little hammer. That's what you mean, just a little teeny one?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I remember having a. I don't know if I got that for birthday or Christmas or what the heck, but I remember having one, carrying it around that I could even put in my pocket.
Yeah. Keith Young used one that size for upholstery. It was really called a tack hammer because they used it for pounding tacks in furniture, upholstery. But the one Keith had though was magnetized. He'd put tacks in his mouth, and then I don't think it'd be correct to call it spit, but he'd maneuver them in his mouth and lips so that the head would go on the hammerhead, and then it was magnetized, and then he just tap it into the furniture.
I remember trying them in my mouth because I thought that's what made them stick.
Oh, that's good.
But I don't remember it working.
Yours wasn't magnetized.
Must not have been.
You know, Lawana talks about having better food at Grandma's, except for on Sunday. You didn't want to go over there for Sunday dinner because most often you would have beans and tomato juice, lima beans and tomato juice.
Or Great Northern beans, the white Great Northern. That's what we had when I grew up.
That might have been it too, but I do remember Mom would make rice casserole or potatoes in a roast or chicken or something in the Dutch oven. But Grandma was always having. I don't know all the time, but we only had to see it a couple times, and we didn't want to go over there for Sunday dinner.
Well, I think in all the years of my growing up, in the winter, every Sunday was beans, and in the summer, every Sunday was potato salad. And then all the other days of the week were potatoes and gravy. Yeah.
I remember the potato salad. I like that.
All right, who else?
I'll tell you a bit. I remember one time I was quite small still, and I was out with Grandpa, and he said he wanted to play a trick on Grandma. So he put me in a gunny sack, threw me over his shoulder, and hauled me into the house, and told her, "Doris, I got you some sack of spuds here. What'll I do with them?" And she said, "Oh, just put them under the stairs there in the pantry Lawana was talking about." And he could not get her to pay any attention. So he put me in there, and I crawled out of the bag and come out, and she just kind of frowned at it like, what a letdown. I don't know who was more disappointed, whether it was me or Grandpa that was more disappointed.
I remember one year that Ben decided he was going to make Grandma a wood box. They usually had that tub there by the stove, and they didn't have very much, so he made a real nice big wood box for Grandma for Christmas. And that went over to their house, and I don't know how long it lasted, but I noticed it was back at our house, and because it was too big there in the little living room. So we would when we
made that thing so strong so it wouldn't break. There was more box than there was container space.
Boy, when it got to our house, we could load that thing clear up until it was coming out of the top of it. It's probably,
yeah.
we'd get a day's worth of wood in that.
Yeah, our space was 10 times as big as hers.
Yeah. But I know she appreciated it, but like they realized that they didn't have the room for it. Grandpa always called me Bunyan.
That's when everybody knew who Paul Bunyan was.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah, they don't even know who John Wayne is anymore.
Let alone Babe the Blue Ox, huh?
Right. Yeah. Well, is Dan with us today? Anyway, Dan Andrus is scheduled to be our speaker next Sunday, and then we'll catch Doug later after that, I guess. So thank you very much, guys. I'm going to hang up, and you guys do as you like.
I'm going to have to say goodbye too, because I'm at Cody's, and
Melissa's, and I don't want to be missing out on family time and making memories for my grandkids. So
Okay.
I guess it's
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Yeah.
love you guys.
Thanks, Lawana. Thanks, Lawana and everybody.
Lawana, I really enjoyed your stories.
Well, thanks. I love your stories, Doug, and I love your questions. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.